Willie D Live.
It's Willie D, y'all, back with another episode of information and instructions to help you navigate through this wild, crazy, beautiful world. In the studio, Remembering Me podcast host, and among other things, Doc Stidler.
Yes, sir.
And his wife, Candyss Love. I started to say lovely little wife, but I didn't want to sound redundant because I know everybody probably say that same thing because you all love it.
Thank you.
I'm sure a lot of people like to say that when they introduce y'all together, right?
Absolutely.
They say that a lot of bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Y'all do a lot of things, man. Y'all do mediation, soul coaching, podcasts. You got the books.
Yeah.
Y'all do
Retreats.
content creation.
Yeah, retreats, yep.
Yeah, you do retreats. What, man? How do y'all find time for y'all?
Oh, easy. It's easy.
Facts.
How?
You know, to be able to put things together of that magnitude, which requires us to give all of ourselves, because this is what we were ordained to do. It also requires that we intentionally take time to nurture ourselves, to have silence, to have solitude, to have date days that don't require us giving any energy to anybody else. Even when it comes to him and I, we have separate rooms in our house, so we can always have our personal energy when it's necessary. Sometimes we are still in love, but we may only speak 10 words to one another that day because we are sharing our own personal energy, and that is okay. It's allowed. It's a beautiful thing, and it's wanted, because in any relationship or with any job, you know, you have to have a solid foundation of your individuality first, individual growth first, and then everything else follows.
Absolutely.
You said 10 words in a day? And y'all together the whole time?
It's times. It's not often, but there are those times where individuality got to be respected in a relationship. And sometimes it could become overwhelming because people don't know how to be with themselves. And if they feel the impulse to do so, they don't feel comfortable telling their partner, because their partner may feel away because they're not comfortable with their individuality and me time. So for the most part, we bugging out, we chilling, we planning, doing stuff. But it's those days where she got to go into her healing, her emotions, vice versa. And we respect those times when they come. But for the most part, we just in our bag. We do our date nights every single week. We alternate. She just paid for me last week, so I got to hold it down this week. But yeah, it's a beautiful balance, and we have that freedom when necessary for me to go in the room downstairs, for her to go in the room downstairs and have our own space.
Nice, yeah. I believe that. That's why, you know, I enjoy the space that I am.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I can go to a different room,
Right.
different part of the house,
Right.
and just, you know, be to myself.
Exactly.
And when I'm good again,
Right.
and I can go back, you know, and
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah.
And you bring that energy back once you've had that solitude. You may be thinking about certain things. You may have seen something funny on Instagram. You come back, now y'all got something fresh to talk about. So it even impacts the relationship in a beautiful way. Yeah.
Some people feel pressure, though, to always be next to that person. Some people have to be like, well, you know, like, I want you next to me. I want to feel you next to me, but you may not feel like being next to that person at that moment. How do you get each other to respect that space?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful segue, and I'll hand it over to you after I say that. But that thing right there, that book that I'm sure she's going to talk about in a few seconds, when the idea came to her, initially she just wanted to go to an Airbnb to like really lock in, not be in the comfort of the home. And it was supposed to be, 2-3 days? It ended up being like almost a month. Of course, she was coming home back and forth, but for the most part, she was like, yo, I'm in a good rhythm. How do you feel about me staying here a little longer? And understanding her capacity as a quote-unquote healer in this realm, and how long she's been writing this book, because her mom has been telling her, just write down your life. At some point, it's going to become a book. So when that seed started to sprout, I had to hold down the masculine energy of, I'm going to be okay by myself until you get that out. And a lot of times people don't have that ability. So sometimes it's months at a time where we need to be able to have our own space to do what we got to do for this world.
Yeah, I think it's also about setting really healthy boundaries initially, because first of all, we were long distance before we were actually together.
For 2 years.
Yeah.
Now, were you in New Jersey?
Yeah,
at the
I'm
time?
from Newark, so I was in Jersey. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
you were in Houston? Right.
Yeah. So that I'm an only child too. So personal space for me is imperative. Solitude is imperative. And having my moments where I need silence is imperative. But one thing that we were very clear about from the beginning is the individual aspect of the healing journey. Everything that we're passionate about is God and healing. And so if that is the groundwork, when I have to express that I need personal time for whatever that is, even if I just wanted to go write a book for a month, it's something that's respected because he understands it is a part of my journey that he may not be included in. There may be certain things that are a part of his journey that I'm not included in, and I have to honor him, honor his personal time, his personal space, so he can cultivate whatever he needs to cultivate. If it's meant for us to do it together, then we will. But that boundary is set and everybody respects it.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me to spiritual maturity.
Yes.
Does everybody have the capacity to discover that potentiality?
Because I think everybody has the capacity. Whether they develop that or cultivate that is a different thing, but I feel like that's innate. I feel like that's natural in the human experience. It's just most of us are born into environments, especially, where we from. I know y'all from Houston, and the guy definitely is rough areas. I'm from Newark. We may have different dialect. And
Brick City.
Brick City, boo. For those that don't know, we call Newark Brick City.
Yeah.
But where we from, our families, our lineage don't really prioritize honoring emotion. We may have a certain framework of religion, but maybe not our own individual relationship and concept and intimacy with God. So I feel like that's plugged into us when we get here. And when you watch children, I remember I was doing my first course as far as meditation. I was recovering from being blind, recovering from kidney failure. I was at like my personal version of rock bottom. So the first course we had, one of the pieces of homework was to study a child, because in yoga we look at children as more so the adults energetically of this planet, because they so close to God. They completely in the moment. They completely free to be whatever they feel in that moment. And we kind of lose that as we become adults. So when you watch a child, you see that divinity is already there. Mm-hmm. They don't need a concept for it. They don't need a word. They just know life is beautiful. And even when it's not, they're going to cry for 5 minutes and get right back to playing. So I believe it's natural, but I believe that a lot of people don't realize once we become adults, there needs to be certain parameters put in place. There needs to be a certain effort given to the study of what your particular soul needs to reacclimate yourself to that divinity. Yeah.
How do we lose that though, man? When we have that innocence, we have that divine entity within us, and all of a sudden, life happens. And what is life happening? What's happening with us?
Well, if you think about it, everything in society is designed to make you forget who you are. Mm-hmm. So if you think about women in makeup, it's designed to help you forget. There's a, oh God, okay, I feel like I'm about to go on a tangent, but we could go there. There's a guy named Edward Bernays. He's Sigmund Freud's nephew. Mm-hmm. And so he, one of them is known as the father of propaganda, but they also refer to him as the mad scientist. And so what happens is he created the idea of understanding that if you play on a person's emotions, if you make them feel inferior, if you make them feel insecure, if you make them feel whatever emotion, if you play on it, then it will get them to conform, it'll get them to consume. And because of that, they'll be able to follow society's agenda and not the agenda of their soul. And so there's to the point of what my husband was saying, there's a story. I don't know if the story is true. It doesn't really matter. But there was a family, a wife, a husband, and their 5-year-old son. And they had just had a newborn baby. They went home with the newborn baby, and the 5-year-old was like, I want to spend time with my little brother. I want to spend time with my little brother, but by myself. And the parents are like, this is a newborn baby. We ain't about to let you just be in the room by yourself. But he kept asking. He was adamant. And so they allowed him to stay in the room with his newborn brother, but the mom and the dad just stepped out of the room and cracked the door. And you hear the 5-year-old saying, quick, I'm about to forget. Tell me why we're here. Tell me where you came from. I'm starting to forget. And so whether the story is true or not, it is the sensation that children innately know that they are divine. They innately know where they came from. That's why you can tell them certain things and they're like, that doesn't make sense, because they're already connected to the truth of who they are. And everybody in society says, don't ask any questions, do this because I said so. And so there's a part of us that innately remembers. And if you think about it, in all of the movies, like the one that I reference is Lion King, when Simba has forgotten his power, he takes a plant medicine, and then he has this vision of his dad, Mufasa. And what does Mufasa say? Remember. Remember who you are, Simba. It is an indication that you are already equipped with everything you need on the soul level.
Yeah.
You already know how to heal, how to grow, how to evolve. You just have to release, shed, and let go of all of the societal norms and tap back into who you are on the soul level. And that's why I titled my book, Remember Who the F You Are. Because when emotions start getting heavy, when you got to start paying bills, you got to show up or perform a certain way to make money at your job, you tend to learn how to conform with mask, and then you forget who you are on the soul level.
Release, shed, and what?
Let go.
Release, shed, and let go. Let's say, man, I'm messed up. I need some spiritual healing. I come to Candyss and Docs. Man, what y'all gonna do for me, man? How do y'all help me get through this blockage? How do you help me to release? What you say? Release, live, and let go. How do you help me? What's the first step?
Well, we got different styles, both of them very effective. And I think the first time we met, you asked us, like, what's the difference in how y'all approach healing? And of course, her being a beautiful woman, you know, she got the feminine energy surging through her, but she also has a balance of masculine energy as well, to be able to, like, compartmentalize who she's dealing with and what they may need on a logistical level as far as healing. I have the masculine approach, but I'm also connected to my feminine to be able to understand emotion. But I concentrate on the mind. And for me, healing is a three-pronged approach. First of which, you got to be able to understand emotion, know how to process that. That's what was going on with my kidney. I always say, if you split apart that word dis-ease, dis meaning lack. I know the young kids say, don't be lacking out here in these streets. A lot of times we are lacking easiness. Easiness is our natural state. Whenever you have that little twinge in the pit of your gut, or that feeling in your chest because something is about to go wrong, you have left your homeostasis, right? So we got to know how to recognize that and then process that. But a huge part of it, especially in the spiritual community, is knowing how to catch what your mind is doing, right? The average human being, like I always say, we thinking 55 to 75 thoughts a minute, 80,000 thoughts a day, and that's average. Most of us are overthinkers, ADHD, OCD, a day go wrong, your thoughts go up even more so. So a lot of us is dealing with 500,000 thoughts a day. Every single one of those thoughts requires a certain level of effort and energy just to think about. So a huge part of this process is catching when your mind is in that cyclical pattern of one particular painful experience and remembering it, latching onto it, identifying with it over and over and over. And every time you do, you relive it. So not only are you having to deal with the stress that's current to you, that may be in your particular environment in real time, you also trying to manage a lifetime of things that have already happened. It don't mean you disassociate, but at some point you got to be able to unpack that energy, unpack that information, and extract the wisdom that was underneath all that pain. That's more so my approach as far as being able to hack your mind to download that information that you've missed because you just keep reliving the pain.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what would be your approach, Candyss?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that they're about to come to me with one-time advice, and I don't work in that way. And the reason why is because they want quick fixes, and nothing about life is a quick fix. They want advice right then. They want to feel better now, but that kind of ignores and disrespects the laws of nature. Everything in nature is a process, and it teaches us how to surrender to that process. So when somebody comes to me and they're like, I messed up, I need advice, how do I heal from it? 9 times out of 10, we're not even going to talk about what you are actually emotionally upset about right now, because we have to go to the beginning, which is the source of the emotional trauma. Most of the time, like how he said, when you relive what you are feeling feeling, that thought of reliving it, every time you remember without an indication or an intention to heal it, you re-traumatize yourself. So I don't need to focus on what's bothering you right now. I need to know who you are at the root of who you are. Because for all I know, the ego is the one that is hyper and upset and feeling like the world is about to end right now. But the inner child may actually want somebody to come and save you. And so I need to know who I'm actually talking to, because the average person has multiple personalities. They may not be diagnosed, but the average person has multiple personalities, multiple identities. Yep. Identities, personas, and characters that live within them. So for all I know, the one that I'm speaking to right now won't even care about the advice that I give them to work out tomorrow.
Oh, man, that's interesting. That is an interesting approach.
Yep. So we ain't even going to talk about what's going on right now.
Damn,
Tell me what happened in the
I feel
past.
like I need to give you some money right now. That was dope. That's dope. I never heard anybody say that before. I never heard anybody put it that way. I may not be talking to the actual person right now. You know, that's responsible for the source.
Right. Yeah. So when I'm speaking to people, I have to start from the beginning so I can identify who is showing up in each moment. So like my husband and I, there may be certain moments where he may trigger something within me. It's very important for him to know and for me to do my own healing so I can express to him what I've experienced growing up. So there was a time where something happened and I didn't feel chosen. It's one thing to try to express the logic to 33-year-old Candyss that wasn't my intention. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. But you're not speaking to 33-year-old Candyss. You're speaking to 7-year-old Candyss, whose father actually left her and did abandon her in his own way. And so that's the person that's showing up. She don't want your explanation. She doesn't want to understand your intention. She needs somebody to hold her, tell her that you are chosen. I do see you. I do love you. And I do want you. So when you are very clear on who you're speaking to, you can give that person the medicine that they need, as opposed to the person that's not even showing up in front of you.
Yeah.
Man, I see why when I be watching y'all videos, everybody look like they just floating. You know, y'all do these communities healing sessions. Y'all be all out there on the grassy
They
knoll,
do be floating, levitating.
and everybody just be. It just looks so peaceful.
Right.
Oh man, that's dope.
Yeah.
Like. Oh, wait, let's talk about this book.
So I wanted to give you this book. It's called Remember Who the F You Are.
Yes.
My mom, like my husband said, she was very adamant about everything that I experienced in my life. Write it. Just write down how you feel. My mom is 26 years sober. She was addicted to crack cocaine and alcohol. I'm 5 years sober. So from a very young, and my dad died from his alcohol addiction. So from a very young age, she was very clear that there were certain things that I would need to express and get out of my system. So she was intentional about telling me to write these things. And then a lot happened with my social media presence. A lot grew in my social media presence. And I wrote a lot that was helping a lot of people. And I just chose to go ahead and put it in a book format.
So just randomly just opening up the book, I come to the page, Return Home to Yourself. Believe before and after reading this book, my prayer is that you give yourself permission to return back to the truest version of yourself. Ain't that something? Right in the pocket with where we are right now. Man, I think if we can just run this interview like 2-3 hours, I might go to heaven, man.
We already here.
Yeah, we here, huh? Yeah. Let me ask you this. You guys show a lot on social media. Very transparent as far as what I'm seeing.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of couples who show a lot on social media end up breaking up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does it ever worry you that you're showing too much and giving outsiders maybe some ammunition to attack your union?
Gotcha.
Well, on one of our podcast episodes, we talk about getting to the point where you become comfortable with being perceived as the villain. And the higher you go up in your success in life, there's going to be people who look at you as a saint. There's going to be people who look at you as a sinner or as a villain. So when you're comfortable with either side of that, when you know yourself and when you know all the different versions of yourself, nobody can really tell you anything about you that you can't run across the ticker of, is this truth or is this not? When it's truth, even if it's something negative, we could at least have that conversation from a place of humility and something I may need to incorporate in my life. But 9 times out of 10, as much as we put on social media, it's still barely a percent of the life that we actually share. So people may feel like they know us, but to a large degree they don't, and we still respect the perceptions they may project. We've come to see that even in some of those projections, that still causes healing, and it still brings up a mirror for those people and them realizing, why am I projecting this onto this person? And then the other part of it is transparency saved our life.
Yeah.
Like when I was at my rock bottom, like I said, the kidney failure, blind, I got fired from 5 straight jobs. I was done with the streets at that point. I really didn't have nobody to talk to that understood my journey. My parents are beautiful people, but very devout Christian background. So they couldn't really understand what I was going through. And by that point, the bros had flaked out on me. I had a 13-year relationship that had disintegrated. So I didn't have nobody. But I knew I needed to get this out to some degree. And I would post things on Facebook, and the same people that was rocking with me for years when I was posting frivolous stuff, now they coming on telling me, this too much for Facebook. You're not supposed to be posting this. But I had no other outlet. But those same posts started to turn into a reflection to me being able to see what I was putting up, and it started to cast the net out to people who was experiencing the same things, who didn't feel comfortable enough to say it in public. That turned into my platform. That turned into my initial audience. And from that point, that has continued to grow, to fine-tune itself. And now we at a point where a lot of the resources that come into our life are coming based on the transparency. We wouldn't be here with you right now, a legend in hip-hop and just in our culture, without us doing what we got to do via social media and putting out the content that we put out and having people respond to it to the degree that they do. Had we had the conversation and I got 3,000 followers, no disrespect, and she got 5,000 followers, this may not have happened. Those followers came from us not putting up what works, because it's certain formats you could do as a couple that you know is just going to cut through on Instagram. We're not here to do that. Yeah. We here to really share those aspects of ourselves that we have made a pact with our soul to feel comfortable doing, even when it means people may look at us negatively. I got people in my life right now that still look at me as the villain. All I'm doing is putting out what has helped me heal. And I'm okay with that.
And to a large degree, so you mentioned ammunition, and we don't live our lives in that way. So that is like almost like fear-based. I don't share anything. And the reason that I share the way that I do share is because it's a part of my healing process. Right. Now, if a person chooses to use what I share in my vulnerability against me, that's a reflection of them. That has nothing to do with me. I'm very secure in our union. Right. And however God chooses to take our union, whether he keeps us together for eternity, whether he decides that tomorrow is the last day, we are both very secure in that, because we understand however God wants it to go, it's going to go. So ammunition is not something that we even pay attention to. But the other aspect of how we show up in our vulnerability has everything to do with, and how he also said, we only show a certain amount, because everything that we experience is a teachable moment. So you have certain people who are in the conscious community, the healing community. They're going to tell you what they want you to know, and it's always going to show them in the best light for the most part. This is also ego-driven. If I say that I know that healing is what I'm ordained to do, that means that I don't get to just show people the good parts. I also have to show them the parts that I'm struggling with. Also remembering that when I show up in my transparency, it makes other people feel safe enough to do it as well. Because as Black people, how were we raised? Don't say that.
Exactly.
Keep that a secret. You have so many people, and I have a chapter in my book that speaks about how we had so many people in our families who struggled from mental illness, depression, being molested, taken advantage of. Nobody spoke about it. It was kept a secret. And so now you have generations that are growing up with generational trauma, and they have no idea why. No one's speaking about it. It's still a secret in the family. And so now you have people who have multiple personalities, bipolar, they have no idea that that ran in their family. I had no idea that my dad tried to commit suicide. That would have gave me a lot of answers when I turned 18 and I went through the deepest depression of my life. But it was kept a secret, and I had to figure it out on my own. And so the intention is to remind people you are not by yourself. No matter how self-realized a person is, they are still a student. And so if I have the ability to share what I've experienced, and this can help you go through whatever you're going through, just reminding you that you're not by yourself, then I'm going to do it, because it doesn't take anything from me. It doesn't embarrass me, the things that we share.
Because we've healed from it for real. Like,
Right. We're really in the process of allowing this to be our healing journey. And it's really like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. If it resonates with your spirit, great. If it doesn't, this may not be the platform for you. But also, we don't do this because it's like a relationship thing. Even though people do it on social media because it's a relationship thing, he was in his transparency online before he met me. I was deep in my transparency online before I met him. It just happened that Source said, this is a great fit. And
that's part of why.
Yeah, that's part of why. And we just continue to share our transparency. And transparency doesn't make people feel that comfortable because it shows them the places where they are hiding. When you are transparent, you allow people to see you. You take off mask, even if it looks ugly. I got a post on my page where I know I look like I just woke up. I don't even know if I brushed my teeth. But I went through my healing process, and I showed people exactly what it looks like when I process emotion. I'm not hiding. There's no mask. There's no makeup. I had acne all over my face. Nothing looked good about that video. So when you have people who are used to only allowing people to see certain parts of themselves, it does trigger them when people show up in their freedom.
The alcohol addiction that you talked about, you think that was connected to your relationship with your father?
Oh, yeah.
How bad was it?
It was bad. So my background is military, and then I was a police officer, and then
Teacher.
I taught criminal justice. So my mom left to go to rehab when I was 4, and then she came and brought me with her when I was like 5, and we went through all the facilities together. So I went to all the AA, CA meetings with her. She had me right by her side. So I was clear of the community and what alcoholism looked like. When it came to my dad, I didn't know that it actually bothered me in the way that it did until there was a moment I had to go to his grave, and I recognized that I had never held him accountable for not being present in my life. And that was the source of me not feeling chosen. It was the source of me just ultimately not feeling loved, not feeling wanted, not feeling seen, heard, or acknowledged. And when I finally had the conversation with my dad at his grave, that was the last day that I drank. So all addiction is a reflection of a world that you are attempting to escape. If a person is addicted to anything, even if it's just food, escapism, watching TV, traveling, which is very subtle, the average person doesn't know that even traveling is a form of them attempting to escape their emotional well-being. And so when I recognized that I was escaping, I had to figure out where the source was, and it led me right back to my dad. Many other things, but specifically my dad.
Was there like a particular moment, like in public or in private, besides being at the cemetery, where the alcohol abuse hit you in the face? Was like, yo, do you fall? Did everybody wake up the next day? Girl, you need some help. You tripped out last night.
For sure. So I was drinking every day, and I tried to stop drinking every day for 3 years straight. And
you were actively trying to stop.
I would
for 3
stop.
years.
I hated it. I did not enjoy it. I despised drinking, but I was addicted to it.
And before you gave it up altogether, what's the longest stretch that you had where you were sober?
Oh, I wouldn't last a day.
Oh, wow.
I would go to work. I would get off work. I would go to the liquor store. I would go home. I would drink. Then I would feel guilty. I would feel embarrassed, and I would feel bad. And then I would make a vow to myself, this is the last day. So I try to drink as much as I could, even in that night.
And what are you drinking?
I'm drinking wine, I'm drinking vodka, lime, anything that can.
Master pain.
Hmm. And so I even burned my house down in the process of drinking, and that was like the last night. It was like
Inadvertently, you didn't purposely.
no.
You didn't say, I'm finna burn this thing down.
No.
Okay.
Actually, I was attempting to have a ceremony with myself and God, and I was saying that I'm ready to shed and release all the things that no longer serve me. And I woke up 5 hours later and I lost everything to my name. That's how that happened. And even then, I still didn't stop drinking. But every day it was like, this is my last day. And I would, the next day, still drink again. So to answer your question, I had a situation where there was someone I was dating, and he kind of just told me, hey, I want to try to see how another relationship is going to work out, and invited me and the other person to the same event and didn't give me the heads up. I didn't know. So I felt like I was kind of ambushed. And so I went off in the parking lot. I told him exactly how I felt. I didn't hold anything back. And in the midst of me going off, I said, how come no one ever chooses me? And I was like, oh, man.
You said it out loud?
I said, this don't have nothing to do with you. I knew right then and there. I wasn't even talking to him. I was talking to my dad. This is how subtle the healing process happens. There's things within our body that's like, hey, you're projecting onto this person, but this person is really just like an angel saying, hey, I need you to really go and heal this wound. I'm going to make you so uncomfortable that you have to figure out where the source of your alcoholism came from. After I said that, I apologized. I recognized that I was not speaking to him. I was speaking to my dad. How come my dad never chose me? How come my dad wasn't present for me? And that's why I attracted situations where men would always choose other people other than me, because I felt like my dad chose alcohol and he did not choose me. And so the next day I went to my dad's grave, and that was that. Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a similar situation where with my mom. After she died, I was really, really grief-stricken. And one day, every night, like the first 2 weeks, she would come to me in my dreams and spook me. It would spook me, like every night. And the thing about it, like, you know, I was like, you know, I want to see her, I want her back. And so she would come to me every night for 2 weeks and try to take me with her. And I was like, no, I don't want to go. I was like,
How
you know,
old were
like
you
when
at this point?
I was in my late 20s when this happened. I was like, shit, I don't want to see you that bad, Mom. I love you, but I was like,
I want you back. I just ain't trying to go with you.
yeah, man. I was like, I want you back. Yeah, I was like trying to go. I didn't know where you was trying to go, but I was like, she was grab. I could see it right now. She was just reach out and grab my hand and just try to pull me. And I'm like, no. And one night, I prayed and I asked God to don't let her come back. And it stopped. That's why I believe in the power of prayer. It stopped, bro. And that's just one time that happened to me where I prayed on something like, and it, you know, it's real, bro.
Absolutely.
It's real. And I'm not even a Bible thumper. I'm not that dude. I'm not even like that. Like, I'd be suspicious of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Man, that ain't real. Man, that ain't, you know, but man, it was real. I'm a believer.
Yeah.
I'm a true believer in that. You was a police officer and you was in the military. Now, when you were in the military, what were you doing?
So in the military, I was...
And what branch were you in?
Army. So I was
okay.
in the military for 10 years, and I was in supply. So, and I was also in a route clearance unit, which means that we were in the unit that cleared the road of IEDs and bombs, so infantry could come through without having to worry about that.
Bombs?
Yeah, you know, it was fun to learn certain things. And so my main job, though, my personal job was, I was a 92 Yankee, which means I was supply. So no one could do anything in the unit without signing it out through me. So I issued everything from toilet paper to whatever weapons you needed, whatever tanks you needed, all of that had to be signed. I was the plug. Everybody knows in the military, your supply is who you make sure you have a great relationship with. Because if you need anything, it has to come through me first.
And then you get out of the military, and what makes you join the police force?
You know, I was walking in the gym, and this guy walked next to me, and he was like, "Hey, we hiring. Do you need a job?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." It was that easy. They want people who are prior military. I am from Acres Home, so me being a police officer,
out to the fofo.
Absolutely, me being a police officer is not something that's ever been on my radar. It's never been something that I aspire to, but it was an easy transition out of the military.
And
in what capacity?
Even underneath that, like you often talk about, the fact that you didn't feel chosen and what you experienced in your childhood, all of those jobs was a reflection of, go ahead.
Yeah, so what my husband is referring to is, it took me a while to figure this out. Everyone's like, you were in the military? You were a police officer? My energy does not, now I can be extremely firm, but my energy still doesn't reflect the energy that's required to have a career like that. And so as I started my healing journey, I recognized that a huge part of me did not feel safe. So I started traveling in my van with my German Shepherd. We travel all around the U.S. and we renovated our van. And I recognized, like, I had like a machete, I had a hatchet, I had
You was traveling by yourself
guns
with a German Shepherd?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like she was famous in the van life culture before, like when I first met her.
Wow.
She was famous in that culture too. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we traveling all around, and I'm like, I really don't feel safe. I have all of these things, even my German Shepherd who's trained in safety and security. Why don't I feel safe? I got as many guns as you can try to figure out, and I know how to use them very well, but why don't I feel safe? And so it started to dawn on me that when you don't feel safe, you start to attract everything in your life that makes you feel what you need to feel. So it's not a coincidence, me not having my dad, not having masculine energy. I would even spray cologne on my pillow just to feel a sense of masculine energy. And that also resonates of me wanting to feel safe. So acquiring the career of being in the military around nothing but men, I was the only woman in a unit of 350 men. And then transitioning from that to policing, to where I have a gun on my ankle, on my hip, on my knee. I have weapons all around me as an unconscious way to make myself feel safe. So me entering those careers had nothing to do with me wanting to be in the military, wanting to be a police officer. I was unconsciously looking for ways to make myself feel safe.
Now, were you on the beat as a police officer?
Yes, I was initially. And then, you know, they just recognized how my smile is and, you know, how my energy is. I was like, let us find you something else to do.
You ain't corrupt enough to be on this beat.
I had one time I tried to pull somebody over there. I was like, you know what? let us find you something else to do.
Just once?
Yeah, that was it. You know, let me tell you what happened. So I pulled this person over. They was speeding.
Hey, sir, I think you were speeding. Do you think you were speeding?
Listen, I ain't even get that far.
What's going on in your life?
I didn't even get that
What
far.
happened?
I cut on my lights, and a naked woman jumped out of the truck and started running towards my car. And then a naked man jumped out the truck and started running towards my car. So I was like, oh no, like they ain't teach me how to deal with this. This is my first day off training. They ain't teach me how to deal with this. So I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm on the radio trying to tell them like, hey, I need somebody to come help me. And then come to find out, the man ended up killing her the same night. And so it was so much that happened in that situation to where I had to speak to like FBI. I had to speak to a lot of different agencies. And they were like, you know what? Let's find another position for you to where you don't have to be in this space. I was like the most positive person in my unit. And I think I was really blessed that my chief saw in me that he did not want to corrupt my energy. He didn't want any of that to change. So they created positions around me the whole 7 years that I was a police officer.
7 years. So they moved you from the streets to what?
So they moved me from the streets, and then I started teaching criminal justice to juveniles in juvenile detention. I started teaching criminal justice to middle school, high school students. I started being like the in-house chaplain to other police officers who needed help with their mental health, speaking to someone and needing someone to guide them through their process. So they kind of just allowed me to do a lot of different things. Yeah.
Doc, let's talk about your kidney
Yes, sir.
situation.
Yes, sir.
So you did get a replacement, right? You did.
No, I was on the way to that. So I was transitioning out of the streets. I was still like depressed, suicidal, homicidal. And my first job that I was trying to get was driving trucks for a living. So I had to go for a DOT physical to be insured on the trucks. And the numbers came back. They was like, 1, we can't insure you. 2, you need to go to a doctor right now. Come to find out, went to the doctor at 23. I was already at 17% kidney functionality. So my kidney was pretty much already failed. And as a result, a few years later, working on that, I went blind in my left eye. Had to get like 3 different surgeries. But yeah, mine started super early. And I didn't even know because I was probably about 40, 50 pounds heavier, athletic build. I thought I was cool until I got that news. And that's the thing with diseases like kidney issues, it's silent. Like you can have no symptoms per se until you go to the doctor and find out, okay, I got some things I got to work on. Yeah.
So, how did you resolve the issue? Is the issue resolved?
So initially, I was just dependent on, modern medicine. They had me on a drug called lisinopril. I was the youngest person in the renal center every week at Newark UMDNJ. And eventually, I started out of desperation. I always say people learn one of 2 ways. You either inspiration, or you desperate. Most of us got to be desperate to incorporate some new things. So I started digging. The more I got close to rock bottom, I just started to get real thirsty for information. Physically first, to just heal myself. And then that's when I kind of got led to the spirit sciences because I never cared about nobody's meditation. I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing right now. So initially it was relying on the doctors, and come to find out, I remember when I had done enough spiritual work to have like my sixth sense kick in, and I was compelled to get off the medication. I didn't tell nobody. I didn't even tell my doctor. I didn't tell my parents. And it had been a year after being off the medication, and my doctor was like, you know what? Over the past year, your numbers have been so good, I'm going to recommend you get off the medication. And I told him, like, Doc, I ain't been on this in a year. Come to find out 3 years later, lisinopril, which was the drug, it has an extremely negative impact on black people especially. It can cause angioedema. It can cause intense bouts of depression. And I was already going through a lot, but I had no idea the lisinopril was even impacting that even further. That may not be the case for everybody. I'm not going to sit here and act like a doctor. But when I did find out that information, it was like God really came through before I even understood how the spirit can give you certain wisdom and data that you need for yourself. I got that impulse to just seemingly do something that was going to harm me even further. But that's what I needed to just clear my energy enough to further go down the line of meditation, which really is what healed me. It got to the point where I had went from 17% functionality to 83%. The last time I was at the doctor at that point, I've had some things come back up that I'm currently dealing with now, but I'm dealing with it from a scope of not being in fear about it. Like when I first got these downloads, I'm thinking about my mortality every day. And from where we thinking about a jump out boy getting shot, something like that. We'll accept that. It was hard to accept that my mortality was happening from the inside out. My body literally eating itself. So at this point, it's nowhere near as crazy as it was then. But now I have the emotional tools to know how to deal with it and just take it as an opportunity to learn my body more.
Is there a history of that in your family?
Yes, my uncle on my mother's side, Uncle Frankie, he actually died of the exact same thing. At the same age I found out about mine. I don't know about my father, but definitely on my mother's side of things. And now my mother is also pre-diabetic. Just found out she's dealing with some cancerous issues right now. So there is part of it in my lineage that I know I'm responsible for, I guess, creating a divot in my lineage and kind of healing our generation. Because, of course, I went to plant-based living. I've been vegan for about 5-6 years at this point. So it wasn't just the meditation, but my approach to my health and my body, all that had to change. And I realized now, having a son, 4 or 5 years old, one piece of meat, he stole a piece of shrimp off his mom's plate at a barbecue one time. But outside of that, his diet has been pristine, has been super clean. So for me to be in a position I was, and to get to a point of not having the dialysis and the transplant actually happen, like they gave me the death sentence of, to see what my mom is having to fight through later in life, and then to see my son come into his life cycle with all the tools that we didn't have, it's like the full circle of healing. And a lot of us are here to break these generational curses. I'm just in a privileged position to have gotten the information to know how to do that.
Yeah. You know, when I see you guys, y'all look so good together.
Thank you, my brother.
And just the positive spirit that y'all have, it makes people want to root for you. I feel like y'all can do anything together. I feel like either one of y'all could be successful on your own, but I think together, y'all could pretty much do anything y'all want to. Like, besides what you have going currently, you know, what are some of the loftier goals that you have together?
I'll start first. It's weird because we don't really live in a frequency of goals. Even with how this came about, you happen to walk into the event, and she was even debating if she wanted to show up, because like I've been more out here in the streets. Like, I come from Newark, the things that we kind of doing out here, I started that in my neck of the woods. And just my masculine energy, my feet was on the ground. She has amassed a huge audience via social media. But when I got here, it helped to compel her to want to get her feet on the ground even more so. So even with that being said, when you walked into that space, you ain't even know if you really actually wanted to go to the event. You was kind of nervous. I never did nothing like this before, but your book is out. So we ended up coming to the space and had the conversation with you, and we here right now. And I say that to say, there's a certain part of spirituality where you get to the point where the vision board is not as necessary as you used to feel it was. God know what he doing. He, she, it, however y'all perceive that. God knows the game plan for your soul, for your life cycle. And a lot of times when we go into prayer and when we go into vision boards, we kind of trying to dictate to God how we want our life to unfold. And God got a much better bird's eye view of what needs to happen. I thought God hated me when I was going through that. Same thing, vice versa. I needed every bit of that information to be able to do what I'm doing now. So at this point, we kind of surrender to God's will. It don't mean things don't come up as far as what people will call ambition. But now at this point, there's no end result or outcome attached. When she wrote that book, what you at, like 700-800 sales at this point in a couple weeks? She didn't have no number. She like, it's time for me to get this book out. I don't care what it do. So at this point, we don't really exist in the space of goals. She even inspired me. I'm writing my book as well now called Memoirs of a Former. Can we curse?
Is it self-published? Yeah. Is it self-published?
Yes.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so she inspired me. I had the seed thought 5 years ago, but now I'm in the process of writing mine as well. Memoirs of a Former Fuckboy, right? Which my brothers definitely need out here, because I went through that journey, and now to be at a point where I realize how beautiful marriage is. Like, they done lied to us. Like, this is the most fun I ever had in my life, being with my wife, and I feel like my brothers also need a blueprint, at least for what worked for me. But even in the process of me writing that, it's not really a goal. It's just God is saying, do this now.
Yeah, I think for me as well, when it comes to goals, and it's interesting because when people live in worlds of social media and motivational speakers, if you're not setting goals, are you even trying? You know, and so when you really have a relationship with your own spirit, your own God of your own understanding, your own soul, you recognize that I don't have to live in the world of goals, because one, I surrender to life. I surrender to whatever my path is, and I trust that whatever is for me is going to be for me regardless. So I don't have to plan, I'm going to write a book in 2023. It's not necessary. I got the download and I followed it and I answered the call. So I don't even know what we were doing, but it was just the next day, I think it's time for me to write my book. And I went into the portal for a whole month.
A month straight.
It wasn't about, I could care less how many books I sell. Even with my skincare line, I was like, I guess it's time for me to put out my skincare. I only put out 50 products sold 5,000 in the first few weeks.
6 figures.
I wasn't even ready or prepared for that. And so what I recognize is it's not necessary for me to set goals. One, because I'm not in the business of attempting to control God.
Right.
And if it is control, it means I'm trying to force things into submission. And I recognize for me that things work a lot easier when I'm in flow and when there's a lot of ease present. That means I don't have to have anxiety attached to it. I don't have anxiety attached to numbers. I don't have to look at insights to see how well things are doing. Whoever gets the book, that's who's supposed to have it. And so whatever amount of money I make from the book, that's the amount of money that I'm supposed to make.
Right.
That just makes it a lot easier for me, so I can live in ease and peace, and I can give to people and give my energy to people, and it's not tainted with anxiety and to-do lists.
And one more
makes a
thing
lot
I
of
add
sense.
to that real quick. So the month of December, I had moved in, October? I think right after my son's birthday, I moved down here. And, this is your first 2 years completely working for yourself, right? When I met her, she was in that process of wondering if it was time. I was able to help guide her through that because I had already jumped off the porch a few years ago.
Where did you meet her?
Instagram.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So at that point, she was trying to figure out if it was time or not. And since then, it's been lit. Like, when download comes, you exercise that, you exhaust that, and then we move on to the next thing as we're guided. So for the most part, we busy. What's the phrase? Booked and busy. For the most part, we booked and busy, even though we're not necessarily trying to do that. We just following God's will. But once I moved down here, the month of December is always like a death time as far as business for me. I do coaching, counseling, couples therapy. People is enjoying the holidays. It's usually not a lot of abundance coming in during that month, and I already know that's the flow for me for the most part. That was our first time experiencing that. So there was a lot of feelings of fear. Are we going to have enough? So we was able to get to the point where we realized this is our time to just die. This is our time to rest. This is our time to be still. And I often tell people, I'm not in business. I'm in stillness. Had we not had that pretty much whole month where we just laid up, doing nothing, enjoying each other, no business, no planning, she would not have had the energy she needed to go for a month straight into the portal to be able to present that book.
Right.
We don't have the energy we need to then be able to present the events we now doing in Houston and all the different stuff we've done since that month of rest and death happened. So a lot of people are doing their best to go hard, team, no sleep, and they're missing the wealth. They're missing the power that's in the actual rest. They almost feel guilty and afraid to go into the stillness. When you got both, you got the energy you need to do what God is calling you to do.
Yeah. I kind of operate in the same capacity or the same vein that whereas when I have goals, but I also put myself in a position to be open to whatever is on the horizon. I don't know.
Right.
Like I tell people all the time, I don't know what I'm going to do before the end of the year. I don't know what I'm going to be involved in, but I'm open. I'm ready.
Right.
Like even when I ran for city council, I didn't know I was going to run for city council that year. I didn't go in like, okay, next year I'm going to run.
Right.
I was like going through some stuff, and I was like looking at the landscape, and I was like, man, you know what? I'm better than them.
Right. Yeah, I can do
I
that.
think I'm gonna run. Made a few calls, like, okay, I'm gonna run for city council. So I never know what I'm gonna do next. But I do have, I have goals. I have goals that I set, but at the same time, I'm always open to new adventures. What's the name of your skincare line?
It's called Sasha Flowers Intentional Skincare.
Sasha Flowers Intentional Skincare. Now that's different.
It is.
Intentional about my skincare. That's what I need. I need some intentional skincare. My friend was giving me a little facial thing the other day, and it started itching. I don't like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you do the face? I'm sure you got some type of facial thing.
So all of my products are natural. They're all organic. They're all from herbs and clays. Yeah, and they're all vegan.
They help to exfoliate?
Yes, they help to exfoliate, moisture, eczema, any of those things that the skin needs. I have a product that is created for that. And so a lot of healing, you know, initially we started through like consciousness, you know, so that is like conspiracy theories, government, all of those things. But the well-rounded aspect of healing, growing, and evolving takes us from just consciousness to now metaphysics, to now quantum physics, to now the anatomy, to now the environment. So that's why we're so well-rounded in understanding so many different things, because that's what our healing journey took us to. So there was a time that my healing journey needed to take me into knowing and understanding the anatomy, knowing and understanding how nature works, and even the energies that we don't see. So all of that's incorporated into the skincare.
Nice. When is the next community healing session?
So we just coming off our second Sundays with Source, and that's one of the events I started in Jersey. When I was even getting a download to start teaching, I didn't want to teach. I was starting to figure out how to heal myself and have a connection with God, and I kept getting that same download you got to go into the council search. I was getting that download to start to teach. I didn't feel like I know enough. Imposter syndrome is a big word people throw around. I felt a lot of that. But I realized there's something in yoga we call the golden chain. So each of us is handing down information. It's not a matter of hierarchy. You just may be further in the journey than me in some way, shape, or form. And you got some wisdom to hand back to me. I take that wisdom, I incorporate it. It's going to be somebody behind me that may not have that 5% you gave me. They need my 5% to go to 2%. So everybody is on some timeline of doing that. And when I finally honored the call, I remember still being on disability, didn't really have money to pay my bills, but Spirit was telling me to do these free classes. And I did my first one person showed up. I never not mention her name, Ashanti King. She showed up, and by the end of that summer, I had 60, 70 people showing up every week. That really became the foundation and springboarded me into my platform becoming what it has. So us bringing it down here, it's like a microcosm of the fact that you're not going to be able to see, like you said, what God has coming through the horizon. You just got to be open to it. So we brought Sundays with Source down here. We just did our second one on Sunday, and it's every second and fourth Sunday, of course, when we in town, because we do retreats around the world, but every second and fourth Sunday at Memorial Park.
So the next one will be June 25th.
Okay.
Yep.
Pain is one of the greatest teachers. Explain that.
So typically when a person is happy, they're at peace, they just, living their life, having a good time, they're not calling nobody asking for help. They're not calling asking for advice. When life puts them on their behind and they start feeling pain, that's when they start seeking answers to make themselves feel better. They become an instant student. And they don't even recognize it. So when you just said the analogy of, I just messed up, how can you help me? It's only when someone experiences, or most of the time, it's when they experience so much pain that they are kind of forced to start to look for avenues to make themselves feel better. This is how you gain spiritual stamina. When pain is present, this is where you start to allow yourself to become comfortable in the stress test that is life. It is how you build your spiritual stamina, how you become your warrior spirit. And this is where you learn who you are. How are you when you don't have access to control, when control is not an option? Who do you become when you don't have the control to make yourself feel better right then and there? You have to become a student and learn how to surrender. The average person doesn't know how to do that. They attempt to force everything into submission, have expectations to outcomes. So when you allow pain, whether it's a relationship, whether it's somebody dying, whether it's you losing a job, whether it's you being on your last dime, if you allow these situations and the uncomfortableness of these situations to be your teacher, they will guide you to the next step. And typically that is what helps people evolve. They love to speak about spiritual awakenings. Well, typically that happens when you have some sort of heavy emotional situation. And a lot of people, that tends to be like divorce, a relationship ending, or being in a really unhealthy situation. That pain becomes a teacher because they start to look for ways to feel better.
Docs, you was a pretty good student out here. You recited Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream at 7 years old.
I know that's right.
What's up with that, bro?
Yeah, you're not playing.
He's so intelligent. I always say he's like one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. He says words all the time, and I'm like, damn, I ain't never heard of that. So I'm going straight to Google just based on words he says. I'm always learning something.
I was noticing how easily these medical terms were rolling off his lips.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, how, like you could pretty much be a doctor out there if
It's
you wanted
nothing
to.
for him.
Nah, it's crazy because that's crazy that you mentioned that. I even forgot about that. I don't even know where you dug up that information.
Well, you know, I do what I can on the show.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, from very early, like I was just always comfortable speaking and in crowds and stuff like that. And I was always a student. I didn't want to do this, but we had this thing called Bible Bowls, being that I was coming up in a devout Christian household before I became a knucklehead and started dealing with the streets. Bible Bowl was almost like Bible Jeopardy. So my mother used to sit there and for hours at a time make me study all this information at the Bible to win the Bible Bowls. Of course, I always won. But that kind of turned into like my foundation for like my acumen as far as a student and just being thirsty for knowledge. And I carried that with me pretty much throughout my whole life. So even when I was in college, before I gracefully bowed out, that was a period of my life where I was questioning, do I really believe Christianity, at least as far as how it's being taught to me? And that's when I started studying everything, different religions, different philosophers. So I'm able to draw in. I'm a nigga from Newark. At the end of the day, I'm still super regular. I'm still hood in a lot of ways. So I'm able to draw in a lot of different pieces of information of how I relate things. Yeah.
One last question before I let you guys go.
Mm-hmm.
And I want each of you to answer this question for me. I'm going to start with Candyss. What is love?
Oh, we've gotten this question before. Oh, man. I would say that love is ultimate acceptance, is ultimate space, is ultimate freedom, it's ultimate understanding, patience, and also it's intentionality and honoring however a person needs to show up in their specific journey without me taking however they show up personally. If I can honor exactly where you are, even if it doesn't make me feel good, but really understanding this is your soul's disposition. This is what God has planned for you. Even if it does not make me comfortable, me still honoring that is like the epitome of love, because you have so many people who will do their best to try to force you to conform to a way that makes them feel comfortable so they can feel loved. And so my idea of love specifically in our union is total acceptance and selflessness in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And then mine would be attention. Like, people don't realize how powerful our attention is. Attention comes from the root phrase to stretch towards. So in this moment, as we having this conversation, as I'm here with you, I'm looking at you to a certain degree. In the midst of the conversation, I'm even forgetting docs. I'm completely ingratiated in this exchange. So what we give our attention to a certain degree without having to express it or say it, is our love being thrown from point to point. And in the midst of this relationship, I realized that she is my teacher as well as my student. But in me learning her, I learn more about myself, and I can't do that without giving my attention to the details of Candyss. The fact that she don't like the wires hanging from the TV, and me realizing, like, you know what, I've been leaving that there too long. I understand now why aesthetics, feng shui is so important to women. Just one of the examples. But the more I become a student and give my attention to my wife, the more I learn about myself, the more I learn about the world. So for me, attention is the epitome of love. Yeah.
Boom.
Boom.
Ladies and gentlemen, Docs Diggler, Candyss Love.
Yes.
No more talk.
Appreciate you, my brother.
Absolutely. Thank you
y'all.
for having
Appreciate
us.
you.
Yeah.